Commonwealth Bank forecasts 3 rate cuts next year. Airlines on-time performance for November crashes and is worse than last Christmas. And Australia's richest boss buys the country's best-known rock and roll magazine. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It's Friday, the 22nd of December 2023. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Last regular episode of the year. Of course, we've got the weekend edition tomorrow and more next week, but it's been quite the year, really.
It certainly has. And of course, as you say, we do have the weekend edition tomorrow, which will be a bit of fun. And then next week, we move into essentially a summer format for a couple of weeks. So next week, we'll be taking a look back at some of the big stories of the last year. You, me, and our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, and we'll pick out the biggest kind of political and economic and corporate and market stories and a whole bunch of other things. And after that, then we are joined by a whole series of guests, very familiar names and familiar voices to listeners of Fear and Greed because they've been joining us all year. But we turn our attention then to 2024 and try and pick out some of the big trends and the things to watch and the stocks to watch and the sectors to watch. And just really, it'll be a great series for investors. But as long as you're following Fear and Greed, you'll be able to get it every single day over the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic.
It's very exciting, Sean. And you know what else is exciting? Your interview after the show today with Steve Daglian, market analyst at CommSec.
Yeah, so we have a look at what's happened this year and some of the sectors that have done well and what Steve reckons about big tech and those sorts of companies. I mean, it's kind of just a great final interview for the year, really, to round up markets, I'd say.
Yeah, it is a great one to finish on, Sean. It's coming up later on after the show, so stick around for that. But the main story this morning, the Commonwealth Bank is forecasting 3 interest rate cuts next year and another 3 in 2025 in news that is sure to please mortgage holders. It certainly pleases this mortgage holder.
And this one as well, after 13 rate rises in a little over 18 months, the growing view among economists is that there won't be many more rate rises, if any. ANZ, AMP and now Commonwealth Bank have come out saying there could well be rate cuts next year. Commonwealth's chief economist Stephen Halmarick reckons there'll be 75 basis points worth of cuts starting in September, and then another 75 basis points the following year as the Reserve Bank tries to quicken up the economy. That would be a relief for many. Since the rate hiking cycle began, monthly repayments on a $750,000 loan have risen by close to $2,000 a month, which is not helping the cost of living crisis.
No, certainly not. And Sean, there was more good news for mortgage holders with the boss of ANZ forecasting plenty of competition in the market.
Yes, and competition in the market is good for customers because that's when the best deals appear. ANZ Chief Executive Shane Elliott said the bank's aggressive push into the mortgage market will continue, which should be good news for customers. Elliott told the group's annual general meeting in Brisbane yesterday that there will be cashbacks and competitive offers via mortgage broker channels next year. ANZ's advertised variable rate is slightly higher than Westpac. Westpac has the lowest of the big four, but ANZ is the only major to offer a cashback. ANZ is also the only bank of the big four that's won market share over the past year. Now, I'm not sure the other three are real happy about that, but all in all, if ANZ is going to put pressure on the others in the mortgage market and we're going to get rate cuts next year, perhaps next Christmas we'll all be feeling a little bit more comfortable about our finances.
Yeah, you are full of good news today for us, Sean. Now, how did local markets perform yesterday?
The S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.5% yesterday to 7,504 points, taking some of the steam out of what has been a pretty remarkable rally. Since late October, the bourse is up 7%. Now, the worst performing sector yesterday on the ASX 200 was the tech stocks, which mirrored Wall Street. Real estate and consumer discretionary stocks, interest rate sensitive stocks, also underperformed. The utilities and industrials were among the best in terms of specific stocks yesterday. The big miners, Fortescue Metals, Rio Tinto and BHP all outperformed. The big four banks all went backwards and Macquarie dropped more than 1%. Transurban and Telstra, both defensive stocks, they did well, while Aristocrat Leisure dropped more than 2%.
And what about international markets?
A really interesting story out of Japan. So Toyota's share price tumbled over the past 24 hours after subsidiary Daihatsu Motors offices were raided over a safety scandal, and the automaker recalled 1 million vehicles. The Transport Ministry's raid of Daihatsu's Osaka headquarters came after revelations that the car maker and supplier manipulated the results of collision safety tests dating as far back as 1989, forcing it to halt all shipments. Now, Daihatsu supplies cars and parts to a number of major brands, including Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru. Therefore, this scandal could well ripple through the rest of Japan's auto industry. It's going to be very interesting to watch this one. Also this week, Toyota had to recall 1 million cars sold in the US at risk of faulty passenger side airbags. A very poor couple of days for Toyota. Away from companies, Brent crude continues to rise, with a barrel trading at close to $80. Gold heads into Christmas around $2,040 an ounce. Iron ore, very important to Australia, continues to trade well above long-term trends. Bitcoin briefly touched $44,000 a unit yesterday before falling back a touch. And the Aussie dollar is buying 67.5 US cents.
All right, Sean, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, if you're flying over the Christmas period and you're on Virgin Australia, then you best give yourself plenty of extra time, because almost half of all Virgin Australia flights were delayed or cancelled in the last month.
In fact, the country's major airlines, plural, are ending the year with fewer on-time services than the same time last year. And remember last year's debacle? How can we forget? Just over 62% of domestic services flown by Qantas arrived on time last month, according to new figures published by the Bureau of Infrastructure and Transport Research Economics. Only 54.2% of Virgin flights arrived on time, compared with 67.8% of Jetstar services. So basically, Qantas's budget airline Jetstar is the most reliable, or at least it was the most reliable in November. I think that's saying a lot more about the other two than it is about Jetstar somehow. The Bureau said the figures were significantly lower than the long-term average performance of 81.1%. Now, Transport Minister Catherine King came out and said the results were very disappointing, adding it's no wonder that so many Australians remain fed up with the major airlines. Disappointing? I'd call that an understatement.
I think so. Now, this is an interesting one, Sean, a really interesting one. IKEA, which is, of course, the Swedish furniture giant, famous for its cheap flat pack furniture and the meatballs that you might find in its store cafeterias. IKEA has posted booming sales in Australia, but due to an intercompany loan, it actually made a loss last financial year.
Yeah, so the retailer's on the way towards annual sales in Australia of $2 billion. And in the 2022 year, posted its largest profit since first opening here in 1975, according to a report in The Australian. IKEA's Australian arm made $82 million that year, up almost tenfold from the previous year. It broke a string of annual losses. But for the 12 months to the end of August 2023, the local arm lost nearly $50 million. It was due to a number of unexplained financial expenses, including a loss from the, and I have to quote this because I have no idea what it means, derecognition of financial liability. So turnover's booming, but last year the company basically performed its worst in at least 8 years. Go figure.
You know what I think we should do in 2024, Sean?
What?
Is put together, I know you're expecting me to say a fear and greed road trip to IKEA or something. No, but put together a list of some of the unique terms that you come across while talking about business news, because that is right up there, isn't it? Derecognition of financial liability, where, sure, I understand the words kind of individually, but put them together, I'm really not sure what they're trying to say here.
I do not know. No idea.
Now, I love this next story. This is a cracker. Australia's wealthiest chief executive, WiseTech billionaire Richard White, has spent $11 million to bankroll the takeover of music publisher The Bragg Media, which owns a local license to mastheads Rolling Stone and Variety.
Mr. White, a former musician who used to repair guitars for AC/DC and the Angels, has doubled down on the music industry in the acquisition. According to the Financial Review, he will own more than a third of ASX-listed Vinyl Group by funding its purchase of the Bragg. White founded and now runs WiseTech Global, one of Australia's leading tech companies. His worth is about $11 billion or thereabouts. It's his first foray into the world of media. The Bragg licenses some of the biggest magazine and entertainment brands in the world, The Hollywood Reporter, Billboard, Rotten Tomatoes, and Hypebeast. That's all for the Australian market, obviously. It also publishes a local edition of Rolling Stone and Variety on behalf of Penske Media Corporation. It basically makes money through sponsored content, music, and editorial coverage and events. Doesn't seem like it's making a lot of money, hence Richard White stepped in. But I reckon the fact that someone worth $11 billion, who is a former musician, obviously knew the AC/DC Angel Skies, spent a bit of money on the local industry. Love it.
Yeah, it's a great story, that one. Now, the government has called on the big social media platforms, Sean, to negotiate new deals to compensate media players for use of content lest they face litigation.
Assistant Treasurer Stephen Jones warned tech players such as Google and Meta, the parent of Facebook, that he's prepared to use the laws if they don't negotiate in good faith. Now, the code was introduced back in March 2021 and gives the government the power to force negotiations between digital platforms and news businesses. It came after traditional players complained that their content was being used by the tech giants for free. While the code has not been formally used yet, the threat of the government appointing a mediator has prompted more than 30 commercial arrangements worth more than $200 million between Google and Meta and small and large Australian news businesses. Many of those deals, especially between Meta and publishers, will expire over the next 12 months.
The proportion of smokers in Australia has halved over the last 20 years from more than 22% to 10.6%. I'm actually quite surprised. I'm impressed.
Yes, I think it's excellent news. Of course, we're talking about cigarette smoking here. In fact, almost 3 in 5 adults now have never smoked, according to the Bureau of Statistics. 1 in 7 adults have used e-cigarettes and vaping devices at least once in their life. Now, the release of data from the National Health Survey 2022 shows a bunch of interesting insights. 8 in 10 Australians have at least one long-term health condition, and half have at least one selected chronic condition. Almost 30% of adults exceeded the Australian adult alcohol guideline, reporting that they drank more than 10 standard drinks a week and or 5 or more drinks in any one day at least monthly. Young adults, aged 18 to 24 years, were more likely than any other age group to exceed this amount. No surprises there, I suppose. About 44% are eating the recommended daily intake of fruit, but only 6.5% are eating the recommended daily intake of vegetables. And on average, we're doing 69 minutes of physical activity every day, and nearly half of us spend most of our workday sitting. Fascinating stuff.
That is a fantastic story. Very, very interesting, Sean. Turning to international news. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery and Paramount Global are in early talks to merge, according to multiple media reports. This is quite big.
Yeah, very big. The deal would see the owner of HBO channels and CNN team up with the studio behind Mission Impossible films and CBS News. According to the BBC, the media outlet, the UK media outlet, talks are only at an early stage. The deal would bring together 2 of Hollywood's big 5 studios. Of course, their world has changed. Streaming of shows and films has meant that traditional media companies have had to invest quickly to compete with the likes of Netflix, Amazon Video, Apple TV, etc. Paramount, which owns the 10 network in Australia, is under a lot of pressure to find a buyer or strategic partner because of its levels of debt, which it's accrued in recent years whilst bulking up its streaming service. Last year, AT&T's Warner Media unit and Discovery merged to become Warner Brothers Discovery. That portfolio includes Discovery Channel, Warner Brothers Entertainment, CNN, HBO, Cartoon Network, and franchises such as Batman and Harry Potter. Put that with Paramount Global, you're going to end up with a mega studio.
And finally, Sean, the Zoom boom is over, with Zoom video communications being dropped from the benchmark NASDAQ 100 index.
Yes, it was the definition of a COVID darling, but now a Zoom meeting is almost slang for boring. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, I still enjoy remote meetings.
Yeah, but I'm on another Zoom call. It's like, I'm on another Zoom call. No?
No, it's still more efficient than kind of traveling to meet someone in person.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Zoom is owned by Zoom Videocoms. It's underperformed every major equity benchmark in 2023, rising just 5.7% as fundamentals weaken and Wall Street analysts scale back expectations for growth. Now, shares of the video conferencing software company rallied almost 400% back in 2020 when investors piled into names that were poised to benefit from the pandemic-induced lockdowns. But growth fell off a cliff with workers returning to offices and competition intensifying from Microsoft's Teams particularly. Sales expansion has been in the single digits for more than a year, a far cry from the triple-digit quarters the company reported during the pandemic. Not alone, really. Other high flyers of that period to tumble include Peloton Interactive, DocuSign was another big one, Teladoc Health was another. None of them doing so well now.
All right, there we go. Up next, Sean, is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. You're speaking today with Steve Daglian, market analyst at CommSec.
Yes, a great one for investors, a great one for anyone who likes fear and greed. It's really wrapping up the market, what's happened this year, who's done well, who hasn't done well, and a little bit about what's going to happen next year.
Indeed. It is coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform, or you can check it out at fearandgreed.com.au, which also has all of our other interviews from throughout the year if you're looking for a few things to listen to over Christmas. Because nothing says Christmas to me like sitting down with
like a Fear and Greed interview.
Few Fear and Greed interviews, isn't it, Sean? Now, I'll tell you someone who probably would enjoy listening to some Fear and Greed interviews over Christmas is a listener by the name of Chris. And Chris sent us a message via Instagram, and he said, I've now listened to Fear and Greed in Mildura, Coober Pedy, and on the longest straight line road in the world, which is 146.6 kilometres in Western Australia. Now I'm off to tell my mum in Perth to listen to Fear and Greed. Surely this is worthy of some Mia love, which is our most enthusiastic advocate, which is the award that we've been just handing them out all year.
We have.
To anyone who is an enthusiastic advocate of Fear and Greed, telling other people. And so Chris here has kind of self-nominated himself for the Mia award, but he's actually there advocating us to other people, including his mum. So I agree with Chris. That is worthy of some Mia love.
Oh, absolutely, Chris. Well done. We are going to get the cups. In fact, we were supposed to do the cups by now, but we just haven't quite gotten there. But I think starting with Chris, we should keep a list of people and send them cups.
Yeah, the Mia mug, which has got the Fear and Greed logo on the side, and you can have it at work. And when people ask you, what's the Mia mug, what's Fear and Greed, then you can advocate us again. And then it's just this cycle. It just keeps going.
Get another one. End up with a set of 6 or something.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, dream result. All right. Thanks very much, Sean.
Thanks, Michael.
It's Friday, the 22nd of December, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.